Recording is on.
Welcome to the January 13th, 2021 DXgov governance discussion. Starting on governance 1.0 first, just looking at the proposal roundup. There's a couple different worker proposals, and I'm just seeing, Sky, that yours is now into overtime. I was like watching that and waiting for gas to go down, and I'm never as sure with the DXD payouts on what that is. But yeah, I think there's both Augusto and Sky, and then Roy, who was a trial period, I think, for the Omen team, and he had kind of, I believe, come through the Gitcoin hackathon. So I think that was a good thing there. Yeah, and then there's a couple more specific ones. I think the Tenderly payment one, which we talked about last week, Nico had been gearing towards that. I believe it's a 5 month. Well, I guess it was 2,500 USDT. So is that maybe a 6 month with the 5 month? I think it was $500 a month, and maybe the 6 month is free. But yeah, that's a kind of, I think that proposal just went up. And then there's the MVP for Omen of the API 3 integration. We've been on the call, that was about a month ago. I think it was before Christmas. We talked about those, and API 3 has been working there. And then the multi-call scheme, big news, and actually just got boosted today or within the last 24 hours. So that'll be kind of coming up there. So any thoughts, questions, comments on those proposals out there? Yeah. So I guess the multi-call scheme will get, I think the boost period was actually a little bit longer than another one. So I think it won't be boosted for another like day and a half or so. But yeah, so that should be exciting there.
Are there plans to make promotion for a majority vote?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that if we want to do a majority vote, like we have to, I guess, like I thought we need to plan this like ahead of time, and like I thought we had kind of talked about this before, and the at least like if we're going to push for that, we're going to whip the votes. You need to be kind of sure of something, and it seems to be that we're still in like the test phase. We want to do it on XDI. So like I think if we push for a majority vote, at least for myself, like you get a majority vote. And like I guess we're not in that case where we're ready to do that yet. But maybe I guess is it launched on XDI now? The multi-call scheme? Or I guess Swapper needs to be launched.
Yeah, I would like to get so I think we need to do some more testing maybe on XDI, and I also would want to hear Nico. I think Nico came down with a little something and is probably not on the call. But we should talk to him too. But yeah, if things look good on XDI, then it might be cool to push for trying to rally the community around getting past 50% of the vote.
Cool. Okay, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about, I guess, two interesting threads that aren't proposals in here. There actually is, and one is on just the treasury discussion, as we've kind of hinted at, and then also on the DXD buyback. So starting first with which we talked about last week. So starting first with like the treasury discussion, there is a proposal now in, I guess, I think it was called Member Balancer Sky, and so this would be to get $2,500 2,500 USDT in the treasury specifically for the Tenderly payment. And so Sky, I could see that it's pending boosting, but there's this is there. And so I think it was 2,510 USDT that was sent to the treasury with the Etherscan link, and then a reimbursement, I think at like 2%, given the current ETH prices. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a definitely a short-term way of doing that, and also like a way of doing it outside the multi-call scheme. So Sky, I don't know if you wanted to say anything else about that.
the details of how it works are on the forum post. This is I guess this is the first. Well, the DAO has a little bit of Psi and Dai from back in the day. I'm not sure if that was from like Gitcoin grants or something, but it doesn't have USDT, and there's an immediate need to make a payment in USDT. It's not a big payment. It's like this is a simple way for the DAO to leverage its community to get a token that it needs. There's clearly some market price risk, which maybe the community members are okay with. Like in this case, it's a small amount. There's like applied a 2% discount to like market price. The tricky thing is like the transaction fees, when you add them all up, like for $2,500 is probably not worth it. Like it probably makes sense if you did larger notional, like 10,000 USDT or something like that. Then the transaction fees matter less. But it's a way for it's a simple way for I guess an experiment to see if the community, which is what the DAO is, a set of people all around the world, can fill the needs of the DAO in a quick, efficient way. And theoretically, the person who is taking that action is trusting the DAO that like that proposal will pass. Right? If that proposal doesn't pass, then there's a slight issue. But then maybe the person would ask for the USDT back or something. So so that's at least that way we can pay tenderly what we need to pay them, rather than have them be owed an amount for like another month or two. So just an experiment, I guess. See if it works.
Yeah, and I think it's a very good time to do it because there's such a specific need for it. I think we obviously need diversification in the treasury in general, but like this one makes a lot of sense. So I think you were able to just send the USDT, and now it's actually in the DAO itself. And then I think immediately after that, the proposal was created to send the USDT to Tenderly for that. So it is like you can think about the multi-call. The multi-call scheme, even if we're using that to make trades or do something that is not as like instantaneous as someone just sending the funds to the DAO. So I think it's a good example of how we can be kind of flexible and move quickly if we need to.
Thanks, Nyla.
Yeah, well, it's on the blockchain, so.
Is everyone bullish on ETH lately? Like, should we actually consider we will need 3 weeks to get a little bit of stable coins, as far as I know. Like, we need 2 weeks for the multi-call to get connected, and then the proposal needs to happen to make the limit order. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, and so here's the kind of post on the the kind of talking about treasury diversification. And so I think this is something we need to do for worker payments. I think it's something we need to be like good stewards of capital to have diversification in here. So I think there's the discussion on what we're doing with the treasury, with the multi-call scheme. And there's kind of, in the post I laid out, maybe some initial allocation that we could do just to get things started. But I think Geronimo is talking more specifically about, well, that's 3 weeks or it could be 4 weeks away from all that. Do we want to do something in the short term? What are people thinking? I guess let's start with the short term, whether we want to do something in the short term. And I guess like the Sky member balancer would be the model. Because that does require a lot more. Like, $2,500 is a chunk of change, but if we're going to do something that is, in 6 figures, that will require a little bit more kind of coordination and some trust on the person sending it. Obviously, like if we have one of these go through with Sky, then maybe it's a little bit better for that. But yeah.
So if the goal is to get like 50K like this week because we're worried ETH price is going to go down, which like that seems kind of dumb. like we could manage that, maybe even 100K. Like we could use the community to do that. But if we're talking about 500K, like you're probably not going to want to do it this way. And so, and DXgov hasn't really taken a view for a while. I don't see what another 3 weeks. Like DXgov is not generally taking views on ETH price going up and down, right? It hasn't, and who's to say it should now? We need stable coins, but do we need to do it in today versus in 3 weeks? I don't know.
One way to do it is we need the liquidity for Swapper. So I mean, obviously we need more than just stable coins, but just not talking about the price. We need liquidity like different than just ETH. But if we talk about short term, I would say it's good if we had a runway of let's say so we can pay our workers for at least like 3 months or something like that. That kind of money.
Yeah, but I think the discussion is, should we wait for the multi-call scheme to do that, or do something more drastic like the member balancer thing?
Do we have a do we have another way to do it?
If we wait, I mean, the like a member is taking the risk, sending stable coins to the DXgov and then requesting ETH back. It's like a very slow trade. That's the only way right now. The only like Zed already said, it's like a business strategic thinking here. Like, I think we should try to be quicker in execution and then like doing some bolder moves just to get started with the treasury management as soon as possible.
I mean, there is we could like still do a plan how to do it, in a good way, do it like without the risks and stuff like that. But if we have a way to do it today, and someone is willing to take, let's say, the risk of being the one sending the ETH, the stables, I think we definitely should take it. I mean, if people want to do it, I think, at least from my perspective, it doesn't matter how we do it. If we can do it, we should do it now. And then we plan for the legit way, like, meanwhile.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that I think we can do as DXgov, right? Because I don't think we can like mandate people to go and like send stables. So I think that's incumbent upon the community. I mean, I guess we could have like a signal proposal outlining this more, but I think it would be, and obviously I think the Sky's proposal that is like the first instance of this. I think we should be planning to act when the multi-call scheme is implemented with like a very specific initial diversification plan, I guess, specifically on like getting, I think, at least 7 figures of stable coins like very soon after that. And so I think that's like more important to me than like getting 50 or 100K in stables and like diversifying, like, getting for something ETH price falling in the meantime. So I guess like to me, it's like, what can we do to make sure that like when the multi-call scheme is in, that we're ready to act like with a plan there. And so I don't know if also we probably want to test it a little bit, right? And so maybe there's something, going on with how we would do the proposals and what amounts, but like how should we go about like getting a plan on what to implement in the multi-call scheme so that we're ready to go when that gets implemented?
Yeah, I see like the move for quick stablecoin is probably the only use case would be worker payments, because the multi-call is the crazy huge feature which allows us to do a lot of things, right? Like providing liquidity on Swapper will still not happen because we need the multi-call. but yeah, I think it's fine to wait for the multi-core.
I guess what type of signal do we need before we like send a proposal for like, you know, to sell a bunch of ETH for stable coins? Or is that just like once the multi-call happens, we are ready, like someone is willing to send a kind of proposal? Or like what's the process, I guess, for like making such a gigantic financial decision, even though I think we're all of the agreement that we want to be able to do that. But like how much and how should we go about like preparing for that? Because I don't want us to get to the point where like once the multi-call scheme is implemented, then we're talking about like how to do this. I think we can run these things concurrently so that we like develop a plan now that we can execute on it when things are ready.
Wouldn't it be time?
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead,
shoot,
okay, I was just going to say, wouldn't it be time to kind of maybe work on our budget? And we're also talking about the buyback, and that might be also a consideration of the budget as well. So it seems like we could work up a document like you've already been kind of working on, Chris, that would kind of account for everything. Maybe each squad figures out our needs and we can incorporate that into the process of transitioning the treasury.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would think the least controversial aspect of this would be securing some amount of roadmap based on the budget in stable coins, right? Like to me, that almost seems like a no-brainer, right, to have at least 2 years in like runway the stable coins, and then from there, other diversification. I guess I don't know, you know, whether it goes into BTC or how much of that, what kind of yield strategies. It gets more nuanced, but like I think maybe we should start empowering some people to like research that and kind of come back with recommendations on what we should be doing.
Yeah, and like also include the DXD buyback into it. Like there's nothing bad about having a proper plan for multi-call is connected. Then we know how to execute and we have consensus already before, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of there, and I guess I think I'm leaning towards Pulp that it is like we need to get the macro view, and then that'll like help inform what specific actions we're taking. And I think that like macro view is runway, buyback, and swapper liquidity, right? And I guess we could, as I said, I think we've started about this in the post. I think we need to have, and this is something we need to do some more work on, is a little bit more information on like the budget and cost, just so we're not, because like right now it's just basically like what is our monthly cost for the last month, and it's like 110K, and just multiplying that out. But I think we could do some projection on that, and yeah, and I think we do have time to develop that, and so that at the end of that we have a little bit more of a like explanation for what we're trying to do on the on like the first trade or allocation to stable coins. So on kind of on that, I guess just switching a little bit to the DXD buyback component, there's been a somewhat I guess no, definitely a lively thread in the forum. Let me just paste the link in there. I don't know if anyone had any thoughts from the thread, or I guess building off the conversation on last week on how we want to maybe go about doing this. I think there's a lot of different concerns that we need to account for here. So any thoughts on the current buyback status? Not deciding whether like we should use book value. There's a discussion about like book value or something else. But I guess like to me, like Pulp, I think if we're going to put some standards and guidelines on this, it seems like it will not be something that we can do in like one fell swoop, maybe limited by like the volume traded in a day. So should we be looking at like having a plan that is purchasing like X amount, which is maybe smaller than we want, a certain percentage of that, or yeah, I guess the amount that we could purchase seems to be you would think like smaller because to avoid the manipulation concerns.
Yes, I think that would be a good idea. And what we're basing that off of depends, and I actually mentioned this in my comment on the DAO Talk post that you did, Chris. I was wondering if we have any information about what the Oracle pulls the average price from, if depending on wherever that hits, is it any DeFi market, any pool, or are we only doing Uniswap and Balancer? Like what pools would be in the world that we're working in? Because that would basically, I think, just to get an estimate going of what our daily volume would be, we could at least work with what's the liquidity on those pools to get a volume percentage. That would be my main question. And again, like we can be a little squishy on a lot of this because these are just recommendations and best practices. Since our last discussion, I actually looked at US law, and then I looked at a lot of European and even some Asian countries. They actually have a little bit more strict guidelines on buybacks, but it's there's a lot of different stuff. But as far as volume, price, which we kind of get covered by the relayer, those are pretty much the standard questions that are asked about manipulation. So I think that would be the main concern. I will say I'm still reluctant for the purpose of this buyback. I'm a little just a little hesitant as far as what the purpose is. And I understand, of course, the initial concern of why we're wanting to fund a swapper pool, to have DXD be the home of swapper because it's our coin. But there is a little bit of an issue if it's really just an issue of what our purpose is here and how the price is really going to be raised, and then how long the price is going to be raised. And I think we need to really think about, if this is just going to be a temporary raise of the price, does that even serve the purpose of the buyback, or is the purpose of the buyback more so to, reward DXD holders? And we think the coin is undervalued, which is more traditional needs for a buyback. And that I actually just saw something from Yearn, and I need to look a little closer at it. I think they're going to be doing a buyback soon, and I need to look at what reasons they're doing it. There is one attorney that I really respect within the crypto space that I think is working on that buyback. So I'm curious to kind of see, and I'd have to get back to you guys about what parameters they're using and justifications. But it's new, it's flexible. I just wonder what's our real goal here, because then that also increases what percentage of the treasury we're actually going to try and reward DXD holders for buying through the buyback.
I guess it's a very subjective view on things. Every member has like their own reasons for why we should do it. My view is it's very undervalued, and it's a very clear signal to the DXD holders that we're like, yeah, we care and we actually want to get even more DXD into the treasury.
I think there's that extra reason also that hopefully there will be no negativity about us using that liquidity that we bought up to use it on Swapper. Like we bought it from the market. It was a market price. It wasn't minted. I mean, I know it's stupid to go this route, but we already discussed using our own DXD that we have, and the community and DXD holders doesn't like that, or at least what we think. And maybe we can do a signal vote on that before we do the buyback, and just ask the DXD holders, like, are we all right with using the DXD we have in the treasury? And then we ask the same question: do we like if we use DXD that we bought from the buyback for the liquidity, and see the difference? I would think at least community would like to see a buyback and that we use that DXD and not just keep it in the treasury.
Yeah, so I guess those are just to frame it, those are the two different considerations, I guess, that people are saying. Like Geronimo is saying, DXD is undervalued. This would be valuable, like almost treasury diversification, and also like a signal to DXD holders. And then second is literally being able to use DXD in Swapper be able to provide liquidity and to have that. And so I guess they're not mutually exclusive. And I get, yeah, and so maybe both those reasons are what people are thinking. And I don't know if it matters if like half the people are wanting one and half the people are wanting the other.
Yeah, and also like pipe to your question, I think like the liquidity isn't great. Like we have Balancer, Uniswap pools, and Swapper. Like I'm more and more in favor of actually like not doing like huge buyback, but rather like constantly buying back if the price is still going down and like investors actually like just selling for such a low price. It doesn't make sense. So we're like, there's no reason for us to do big buybacks, but just like constantly buying back if the prices are still going down. With which also like results in a more secure way of buying back, because our buy orders will just be like not as huge as someone expects.
Yeah, so I could definitely see that being a justification, and that's like the normal justification with why buybacks happen. Like people sometimes, I've seen both crypto as well as traditional companies doing buybacks year round, basically, because they think that, their asset is undervalued and they want to reward shareholders. And for us, and a great example is we do have, for now, a huge, a growing treasury. And it's a good way to reward shareholders. My one thought is, though, if the idea is to increase the value of DXD, or we feel it's undervalued, if we are just taking the DXD and then moving it to the Swapper pool, is there an issue of pumping and dumping that's going to happen in that process? Like, are we actually going to be helping the way that the price if we're just moving it around, essentially?
Right. Like, I guess there's a few different ways to frame it. I think part of it is like, I think that literally is one of the motivations, right? Is to move some of the liquidity into Swapper, right? That would be buying some off of the open market and then putting it onto Swapper, right? I think it could be framed as purely a buyback where you take the DXD off the market and burn it. And then something else that we haven't really discussed, which we probably should address as part of this like write-up or publication, right, is that we actually already have an automated buyback mechanism. It's actually called the buyback reserve in the bonding curve, right? So I think we should acknowledge that and kind of explain why we would do something separate from that as well. Like, I think there's an obvious reason there, which is that the reserve, the price on the curve is like so far below market that it's effectively like not taking any DXD off the market. But I think we also should start thinking about like, what are our long-term plans here for the bonding curve and the buyback reserve, and like, how does that tie into this?
Yeah, I raised this point, which seems relevant to what you just said, but I raised it last conversation we had about this, is that because DXD is the bonding curve, right? It is its own thing. Bonding curves exist on their own, and DXD is a claim on revenue that DXDAO produces from its products. It's not a share in DXDAO, right? So I would argue that DXD, just like Omen token, if it existed or something, it's another token. It's not actually DXDAO. So I don't actually think that it's DXDAO's like share, right? It's share. So it's like it's not a share buyback. It's not a share. Interacting with the curve. It's interacting with the bonding curve just like anyone else is interacting with the bonding curve.
Yeah, I guess I disagree with that assessment, that it's like an externality to the DAO itself. And I think the kind of the key thing here is that it's actually so the bonding curve is the DXD token contract, right? And it's upgradable, right? So the DAO itself actually can upgrade the logic of that bonding curve. Like I think what you're saying now, I mean, could make sense if it was an immutable, like if the token was basically just out there and it is what it is, and the DAO can't change it, but the DAO actually can change it, right? So ultimately, I think it's actually the opposite. It's really just the DXDAO, and the token is just kind of this mechanism by which the DAO either raises capital or distributes profits. And I think the current model is this: it's essentially a variety of mint and burn, right? But the burning is basically supported through this like isolated pool of capital called the buyback reserve that sits in the token contract.
Yeah. So you're saying we need to find an answer for the future of the bonding curve before we do a buyback?
No, I don't think we necessarily have to find the answer, but I think it's worth like acknowledging the fact that this is the existing system, right? That was set up by the DAO, right? So like the DAO already has a buyback mechanism, essentially, right? It's just an automated buyback mechanism built into the bonding curve, right? And so if we switch, so to speak, or like continue to add a new mechanism by like the DAO directly doing a buyback through the Gnosis protocol relayer, like I think it should be part of this bigger picture, right? Like I mean, essentially, it's just like there's this token supply, there's like the profits, and like it's all like the same thing. I think at the end of the day, right? And it's just how does the DAO manage it, and so like I think what I hear from like what Pulp is saying is like we want to be careful and follow best practices so as not to be seen as like manipulating price or not actually doing anything to manipulate price rate. But so I think we just need to have a very like smooth, like transparent, consistent process by which like the DAO can take tokens off of the market when it seems appropriate, like whether the motivation is just that the treasury has gotten too big or that's part of the mint and burn model. Like I think that all needs to be just kind of consolidated into some kind of like, clear plan or publication.
I think because I think a lot of people are afraid of like obviously if DXDAO says we're gonna buy back this amount of DXD from the market, if we don't put a ceiling to that price, it may pump, and then we like both community and us, we don't know if like this is an artificial pump, so it could get dumped on, or we don't know that, or if the community is actually bullish on it. So if we like if a small thing as putting a ceiling on the buyback on like which price this specific buyback is about, I think could solve a little bit about the pumping at least. But at the same time, we want to move forward, and if we want to do a buyback, and let's say the price actually goes up and it cancels our buyback, we're back on square one. So it depends. Like, what is the reason we want to do the buyback? So if we need the liquidity, I don't want a swapper to be delayed with the liquidity here, and I think maybe we should do like 2 buybacks short term and have them separated. The reasons are separated. So one is only for the liquidity for swapper, and the other one is we want to keep this DXD because it's cheap, like it's low.
What happens if the buyback happens like ongoing and the market sells all DXD to DXDAO, and so DXDAO holds all DXD? What does that mean?
Well, I don't even know if that's if we do something like where we're only going to buy back 25% of the average daily trading volume, then we would be basically adjusting that price each time we put in the relayer to actually do the buyback. So I don't know if that would be possible.
Yeah, and to answer your question, Sky, you can take my DXD from my cold, dead hands.
I mean, it's an interesting thought exercise, but I don't think that's
what happens. What does that mean?
What do you mean? It would buy every DXD?
It would mean.
I mean, this is what happens all the
fills in like the market just sells into the buyback and sells all of a sudden all the floating DXD is owned by DXDAO. Then what?
That's
So
called
then-
going
Do an IDO.
private. It's called going private, right? And you just go private, right? You'd like have all your tokens, and presumably you would then do another IDO like another time. And like so, the reason people go private is because they don't want to. They like want to like not be under like the whims of like the market wins, right? It's like I guess that's possible, but I feel like
So where does the
I don't know.
revenue flow though? Like, still in like if the DXDAO owns all the DXD, what happens?
It would be like it would be sort of like it would turn into like one of those like nonprofit corps that like all the revenue goes to the operations, right? There's no distributions.
maybe endowment is a little
In
bit
theory,
better.
if you're talking about theoretically, right?
There's a gigantic pile of money growing. Right.
It doesn't matter. But, yeah.
No. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of. I think we are not in any way like in. We don't really know what we're trying to do. We don't really know how we're trying to do it. I think to me, the most important thing is swapper liquidity in some way. I'm not even saying for DXD, but just in general, like that to me is like the most like short term thing that we're trying to do, and we need to like focus our efforts in like whatever solution we come up with. That's what we're trying to achieve, at least in the short term. But there are lots of general questions about like DXD and a buyback, and even like I know YAM has like a YAM wall that basically says if the price of YAM ever gets below the value of the treasury, then like it like automatically buys it back. And so yeah, I mean we have lots of kind of options there, but I think like the most pressing one is swapper liquidity, because that's going to drive revenue. That's going to be important to DXDAO. Cool. Yeah, I just want to keep moving on. We can, I think Pulp and we can figure out. I need to respond to that treasury. I mean, to that thread anyway. And then I think there's a couple different things that we can think of. I think the snapshot about are we okay with using the DXD in the treasury is another idea there that we can think about.
Yeah, that sounds good. We'll put something together.
Yeah, and then Paul, just moving on to, I guess I have the onboarding guideline, but I think it's the contributor guidelines that you just sent out a post about. And so I don't know if you wanted to set that up for us.
Sure. So this is a lot of stuff that we've already discussed. So hopefully some of it isn't new to you. But I would love, it's a semi-final draft that hopefully, depending on how everyone feels about it, we'd like comments and feedback. And if we can get something that's pretty solid with the community, we'll go forward with an alchemy proposal. And then I'm going to be working with Keenan and Violet to getting this in a more established format with all the other information that Keenan's been working on for documents for the website. So please take a look at it. Let me know what you guys think. The one thing that came up actually this morning, we have a new dev, Adam, who's going to be joining Mesa. He actually had a question that we brought up, I think, last week that I wanted to just get a final word from y'all on, which is, are we going to be doing a 50% worker compensation for the 2-week trial period, or should we just be doing a full compensation for the first 2 weeks? That's it. He wanted to know because he wants to put in his worker proposal on DAO Talk.
When you say 50%, do you mean splitting the payments 50-50 at the beginning and end?
Great question. No,
Or do you mean just
No.
50?
I talked with Adam today about this.
yeah. So just
I also did look at the paper, and the paper, it's not in the paper. So he is 50% of his normal wage. That's the idea, not
pro
split.
rata rate.
So I don't know what other trial period workers have done.
So I have the most experience here with trial
Yes.
workers. I'm almost certain that we don't want to pay full amount, and so what we could do is
He's
set up.
fine. He's fine with 50.
What we could do if we want to do this fairly is that we say, if someone goes through the trial periods, both of them, and goes on to a full-time like worker, that 50% that they didn't get, they may get it later. Maybe if we want to do something fairly. Like the reason why we don't want to take that risk early is because obviously we don't want to trial workers and fail with them and then we pay a lot. Like we already lost a lot of money by doing that now with the trial workers we did before. And at the same time, we can't ask these trial workers to work for free. So we need to find some like middle ground. And maybe the way to go is actually saying, hey, you get the 50% if you succeed, or like it becomes like a bonus or whatever we could call it. But we don't want to pay full amount on trial periods. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's very valid, but it's just not to make it too complicated. That's
Yeah.
But
I mean,
yeah, I think it's a great idea to like tell if you're so you think you're doing a trial for 2 weeks, and then you week like the next 2 months, and then if you stay, then you get 50% of the trial. Or yeah,
we can maybe try to make it simpler. Like
yes,
if it is. I don't know. Maybe if we get that portal up for workers, maybe we could build that in to the contract. So if someone makes a proposal, we build that in. So if we choose a trial worker contract, everything is built into that one. I don't know, but I definitely see, like, just from the risk perspective, we should do that. And from the experience perspective, obviously that's much more complicated.
Right. That was the one thing. So I even mentioned to Adam that if he wanted to work with Martin on more like a long-term 2-month plan, and then, share his trial period on DAO Talk, and then maybe do the alchemy proposal just after he made it through his first 2 weeks or something like that. But he was kind of really okay with just doing doing an alchemy proposal for 2 weeks and then doing another one subsequent to that. Maybe that is the simplest way to do it, just so people can like you're kind of saying that from your experience, it's not 100% pass rate from the
I think it's way better if he also does like the 2 weeks, because the main reason is that he's a dev and he's like a full stack dev, but we don't know which part is really good on, and he also is not. Yeah, so it's very difficult to like plan 2 months ahead, but after these 2 weeks trial it's much easier to do, because then we see what are his strengths and what he wants to work on. And I think it's just we should. I think it's really okay to make for everyone like 2 weeks and then do the rest. Or
What was I'm still a little confused about what the original question here was. The 50% of what?
50%
compensation.
So the question is. Wait, sorry, can somebody just spell it out so I understand what?
Yes. So we had been doing a compensation structure for the trial period, which was previously 2 months. We had a 70% for the first month and 90%, right, for the second month. We all know that. So there was some discussion at the last governance meeting when we reduced the trial period to 2 weeks. What percentage of full compensation would trial period workers receive? So Martin and I were wondering whether we wanted to do 50% of full compensation or just go ahead with, 100%. And it sounds like Zet is thinking it's best to do 50% of compensation.
I see.
And others as well, not just Zet.
So 50% of the normal rate over a 2-week period.
Exactly. Yes.
What about the 75%?
Well, now we're doing 2 weeks. So sure, 50%, 75%, what everyone wants.
There's never been 75%, Sky. It was 70%.
Right.
Throwing out other numbers.
I would say if we do shorter periods, we should do also a little bit lower. Like we want to lower the risk for DXgov. We don't have HR. We don't have, like, me as a product manager. At least I wasted a lot of time managing trial workers, and I would say, like, I'm not getting compensated for that also. So I would say to lower the risk, and also we want to trial the workers in the way that like they get more if they do a good job and actually work full time and not just do work and actually get money and go away after a month.
Yeah, the safest way and to make it fair too is let's say even if it's 90%, you just do the 2-week trial, and then at the end of the 2-week trial, you submit your proposal for 90%.
It's not that easy, right? So like, I don't want to say names, but obviously sometimes you can't really judge if the trial work time, like if that person actually worked that time or not, and like we had problems before. You could fake a lot in these 2 weeks, and it's really hard.
And you definitely don't want to do the proposal before the trial period. So you still want to do the proposal after the trial period.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think that could make sense, because if somebody is like literally scamming, then they could get nothing at the end of that 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? And if they are just not at the level that they had billed themselves at, then we pay them for the level that we assess them at the end of the 2 weeks, right? And so they get paid fairly for what they do. It's it minimizes the risk. I don't know, but
Yeah.
You need the 50%.
Can I ask
You want the
again?
fair rate of the 90% or something, or 70% higher. But you
Right.
pay.
So I actually incorporated that into the worker guidelines under worker compensation, that the community will determine what work you did in good faith, and as a community, by discussing with your coworkers, will determine what you actually accomplished, and we will basically compensate you based on that rate. So that's in there, as well as at the end, I have two different kind of clauses that I thought could be useful for us, because one is a conflict of interest clause kind of thing, just to kind of inform people like what could be considered conflicts of interest, and like just check with community members if you think you're acting in like against the interests of DXgov. And then the other thing kind of falls into like what Zet was talking about, just like scamming, just people acting in good faith and, saying, if they say they can do something, or if they are pretending to be someone else or anything like that, those would be things that we wouldn't, the community doesn't agree about on those kinds of things, and might come to a consensus as to, how we feel about you working for DXDAO, that kind of stuff.
I want to bring something up also now when we've done a lot of trial workers, also just managing a product on DXDAO, is there is a big gap between cultures, like in Sweden or outside of Sweden. Many workers want to have a boss that tells them like, do this, like hold their hand and like do these stuff, and they like having a leader or stuff like that. So I would say it depends on the team or the project, but I would like DXDAO to be more like this Gumroad article someone sent, where they don't actually have time, they don't have bosses or stuff like that. They have tasks, they complete them, and they say, hey, I completed these tasks and it took me that much time, and this is the compensation I want. I mean, I'm not saying let's go all at that in that direction, but just this, how we communicate work and how we communicate the roles of people here is also how people will react and expect to work. So I would love if we could have that kind of communication where we tell the worker like, hey, there's no bosses here. We will not only check, like we will not look at your code or design or whatever it could be. We would like you to be like a part of DXDAO and be like involved and do your own thing. And if I mean, it's hard to do that in 2 weeks, but I would say, from my perspective, the more I'm holding these people's hands and trying to guide them, the less they do their decisions themselves.
Onboarding and finding new people is incredibly important and incredibly time consuming. So like, we need to figure out the most efficient way to do this, but this is like a necessary evil that we need to like figure out how to get good at.
Right.
Yeah.
And make it scalable.
I did like have one I had like 3 calls last week or so. One with Adam, and then with 2 other guys, one yesterday and one last week. And I really told them, yeah, we're all equal. I just told them like upfront what we are. And yeah, some of them are somehow quite disturbed or they don't get it, and then they don't show up again. So I think that's the most best or efficient way to do it, because if you really go on a call and this guy yesterday too, he was thinking he didn't like to show me his face, and in a way I can accept that, but in a way it's also very odd, because if you're in a one-to-one situation, I think I have like the right to see who is the other guy, or yeah, how to see who is he reacting, what's his emotions. And with Adam, it was like instant, very easy, and it worked well. And he had like this, he had like some connections, and with the other guys was just like, yeah, please give me a task, and do you pay like 2 weekly or 1 weekly? And yeah, that's not the mindset we think we need. So it's really, I think it's really tried to filter them out like before they even get to trial somehow.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm talking about, and obviously, I've been desperate for developers, so I was maybe too soft with my trial workers, and maybe sometimes too controlling, like do these stuff. And
also, Adam came to me after I posted on Twitter that I'm joining DXgov, and then we're looking for
nice.
devs. He was the only one reaching out, and I think the guys who like we reaching out to them who are not used to like this kind of organization or crypto, it's difficult because they are like this mindset, getting jobs, and 2 weeks they have to do this, and then they get paid, and I think we should much more try to, I will maybe find some other place where you can more have.
Yeah, I think we need self-starters, and so I think in that sense maybe traditional methods of recruiting aren't necessarily going to work well for DXgov.
And I think like from my lesson is even if you like need something or desperate for developers, I'm more behind because of them, and it actually hurt me more than helped me. So that's why I would like maybe to have something really rough, like 50% of the pay or something like that, because it shouldn't.
Yeah, it's about, to me, it's not about like the payment or our system. It's about getting to yes or no very quickly, right? And like Martin, I think, is giving a good example of like, you just got to talk to them, figure it out, and like get to yes or no, and like what is the quickest way to do that. But like, I'm not saying we need to come up with a system. I just think we need to come up with a way of like processing lots of possibilities, because it's not that like, and then if it like doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Let's go on to the next one, and just like whatever is the quickest way to do that. And I think everyone individually needs to get good at reading people and understanding different cultures and understanding whether it's a fit or not. And like, that's kind of the most efficient way to do it. And like, I think a video call is like, I mean, just kind of as a quick way to do that. I understand there's like, concerns with, technical developers and like understanding reading their code, but like, I think we can, it's just reading people.
I also told him or them, if you really do a good job, then it will be a job for maybe for years, if you are fit. And then if you only get paid like 50% the first 2 weeks, it's nothing, it's just like upfront you have some risk, but it's compared what you get afterwards. It's like, it's very easy to do this deal if you want to stick long term, and we looking for long-term people and not for like.
That's a good point, Martin. I included a how we work section in the contributor guidelines, and the first thing is flat hierarchy, and it kind of goes over some of the points that Zed, I think you mentioned, but I would appreciate any comments, especially maybe in relation to how you would speak to developers about this, just even for other, new squad leaders who need to talk to people to onboard them, just so when they're interfacing with onboarding people, they can like have points of reference. So that could be helpful as well.
Yeah, I'm really into this idea of like simple heuristics instead of like bureaucracy, right? And like simple heuristics are not going to like solve everything, but it's like this is like a quick rule of thumb that you can use to like execute at that. I think we need to like think about how we develop those. The one thing I wanted to ask to add on maybe the contributor guidelines is this. I think we talked before about pricing the DXD at the USD price at the time on the, like at the DXD ETH price on the curve, but at the USD price. And maybe this is an opportunity to put that in this update if we're going to send this through like a proposal process. John, I think
we should do that, because as the ETH price goes up, basically that drives down the amount of DXD that like workers would be getting. And I think everything's sort of framed in USD, so I think it makes sense to use the mint price, like the highest point that DXD was sold on the curve in USD terms.
And then I guess like when we shut off the bonding curve, I guess we should just freeze that price. Is that like the price we should be using for the time being? Or like, I guess maybe we'll have to think about another way to price or think of another way to price DXD going forward.
Could probably just move it to all-time high in USD terms, no? After the bonding curve's gone?
Yeah, and then I guess the question is, what happens though if the market price goes above that? Do you then switch to market price, or is it kind of like the max?
It's the market in dollars.
It's basically like the max of either the current market price in dollars or the highest it's been sold from the curve in dollars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you could just stick with the current. I don't know. So that's.
And so let's just account for both, and then I'll put a comment on the DAO Talk post to say that that's something we came to a consensus on from the meeting.
Anything else like that? I mean, just not do we need to answer on the call, but I think like anything else like that is a good time, like worker compensation guidelines that were before, like anything we want to like update for clarity's sake. Maybe reply to that on the thread. This is a good opportunity to revisiting this.
Yeah, and just comments on the doc itself if something comes to mind. Yeah, anything like that would be helpful.
Cool. Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to touch on briefly, just as a kind of governance discussion item, was yesterday we had another Gov 2.0 meeting, and in this one presented a solution that was trying to maybe combine some of the previous solutions that we had presented before. The video is posted in the video, and the docs are posted in the governance discussion agenda. And so I think that's hopefully something that we're going to use as a foundation structure, maybe to tweak and develop moving forward. The kind of core idea of it is having a new voting power equation that like reconciles DXD and rep. So DXD and rep maintain their base primitives, as rep being on-chain on-chain representation of contributions to DXDAO, and then DXD being kind of the liquid financial value of DXDAO, and then a combination of those is what determines like the new voting power, and then using some variables to kind of raise or lower the voting power for each of those based upon like how long how much DXD you have staked, how long you're committing to it in the future. This would also apply to like DXDAO liquidity pools themselves. So you could imagine someone committing to the DXD ETH swapper pool for a certain number or committing to providing liquidity. And then on the rep side, there would be like a decay function. So there would be, you would start to lose voting power influence based upon the last time you earned rep. Now, this wouldn't affect your overall rep amount. It would just be your rep's effect on the voting power. So I think there's still some things we need to model out and tweak with the equation. I'm hoping that this is a structure that we can rally around. The goal is to have a signal proposal that outlines some of these things by the end of the month. And so we'll have one more meeting 2 weeks from yesterday, January 26th, to go over that and hopefully work towards the signal proposal. And then there'll obviously be like a much longer time in terms of like implementing and that. So if you're interested, like please reach out specifically on the modeling thing. We have some ideas there. But yeah, if any thoughts or questions now. Cool. I really thought we were going to get under an hour. That's why I was like, the end of the last discussion was like trying to move forward. I thought we were going to do it, but we're just a couple of minutes over here. So any other thoughts, comments, concerns? Cool.